All right, excellent. Welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining. And what I want to talk about today, we're going to spend 30 minutes on is how to automate the process of going green. This was an idea that essentially came from a client of ours who had talked a little bit about how the factors that went into energy management, that went into all the things that you guys have to worry about day in, day out, that if we can automate the process of being quote-unquote green, if we can automate that process, we can achieve results without necessarily having to dedicate the staff and the resources and all the time and effort that a lot of times people get bogged down on. So the big challenge when we started working with other clients, the big challenge that we identified when we started working with the different folks that were tracking energy was the first, for a lot of people, energy tracking is something that is added to their plate of additional responsibility. Right? Oftentimes it's a facility manager who is told by a superintendent or a city manager or a boss that they're going to be responsible for the energy management program. Or it's a council or a board stating down to somebody, hey, we need to reduce energy, we need you to take care of this. Very rarely do we have a situation where somebody has a dedicated energy manager or dedicated energy staff. So that's the idea, is that you guys are already wearing multiple hats. How do we simplify this process? How do we make it easier for you with 25 other things that you're responsible for? How do we make the energy management side a little bit easier? Time and the money, right? For a lot of folks, this is an unachievable dream because they don't have the funding, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the manpower, they don't have the hours in a day to do this stuff. A great quote I heard from a client of ours said that energy conservation is the enemy of comfort. I thought that was interesting because in a lot of people's eyes, what energy conservation is raising set points, lowering set points, right? Making it less comfortable in my building so we can save a few dollars on our energy bill. That does not have to be the case. This does not have to be an expensive and time-consuming process. It also doesn't have to be a difficult process. One of the other major barriers that people have when it comes to tracking and doing actionable items with energy data is that it can seem really complicated. A lot of people that are responsible for this stuff don't necessarily know what the difference between a kilowatt and a kilowatt hour is, right? Aren't looking at CCF and looking at therms and all this stuff and all these different conversions and weather normalization. There's a lot of really technical science that we could put behind what we're doing and why we're doing it, but again, the point is to automate it. If we don't automate it, it's going to be complicated. It's going to be difficult. So that's the challenge that we were presented with. That's what we've seen time and time again. Solution is two-pronged. Pretty simple. It's automation. It's organization. If I can have one person, or I can have maybe even half a person, be somewhat responsible for the automation machine, make sure that the outputs are consistent, make sure the right people are involved, and make sure the data is simplified and organized. If information is simplified and organized, then that's going to make sure that when we communicate it and we convey that data, not only is it bought in, people will actually listen to what we're talking about, but we know what we're talking about. We actually have the data to present them. So that's the challenge. That's how we're going to solve it. So how do we go about actually solving it? This is a concept that we have talked about at Dude Solutions before. The idea here is this is a decision-making process. It's how we identify how we're going to solve problems and then how we address those problems. It's how we move from one phase to the next in our progression of being, whether it's facility operators or energy managers or utility operators. So the idea with the circle, we're going to get into detail on each one of these, but the assess phase, that's understanding your situation, knowing what your root causes are. The priority phase next to that, that's identifying where can we actually make a difference. What are the things that I can do now? What are the things I can wait on? And when we come down to the plan, that's where once we have our priorities, I'm going to adjust these lights, I'm going to do this action, where we can actually put a plan in place, time and money. Of course, what do we do after that plan? We go and actually do that project, right? That's the execute phase. We replace our lights. We do our education. We do our commissioning. The final step here is maintain, which means continuously looking at that data. Always tracking, always monitoring. And the reason it's a circle, because what happens? As we monitor, as we track, new information becomes available. Our situation changes. So our assess phase becomes variable, becomes different. The idea that, again, that this is a cycle. It happens constantly. Typically in a yearly or semi-annually type of process where we're looking at information, we're creating some sort of plan or actionable item, we're doing that action, and then we're looking at the results of that action to determine its next step or its outcome. So, get a little granular. So how do we actually automate going green? How do we actually automate energy? The first step, obviously, assess, understanding your situation, identifying root causes. It's trends, it's history, it's consumption data. So with the assess, you simply have to have access to information. How do we get the right information into the right people's hands when they need it? That is done by simple email, right? Getting emails of information to the right people on an automated process. The whole point there is that we don't want people sitting in front of a computer crunching numbers, spending hours and hours to identify what the problem is. I want you to pull open your web page and have a list right in front of you of all your issues. If we can automate the way that you look at data, it makes the assess phase painless and quick. Because we're not trying to identify, okay, here's 400 paper bills, here's a big spreadsheet of all my historical data, time to get to work. Instead, what's happening is you're walking in directly into the data, the history. So on the left, this is looking at monthly usage and monthly demand of energy, electricity specifically in this example, over the past, I think this is the past 18 months. We're looking at this year and last year. I'm already noticing some problems with this year, that red line. It is significantly higher demand at the same time last year. Everything was trending fairly well except for this. Why? What is happening at this location? So this is the automation of the assess phase. I don't require somebody to sit down and try to crunch this. It's being done for me. I can immediately look at it and move on to my next phase, which is priority. Graph on the right is looking at much more granular. It's looking at interval data. So in this case, instead of looking at how much we were looking at each month, this is now looking at 15-minute interval over the last day. And I can also see, again, compared to the previous day. So it looks like my current day's consumption is significantly less than yesterday. Maybe this is an unoccupied schedule if I'm an education institution. Maybe there was some sort of event or project that finished that has given us a little bit more efficiency, whether that was a control sequencing, a lighting upgrade, right? Maybe we changed the use of this building or this location. Maybe it used to be offices and now it's storage. Whatever it is, the idea with assessing is simply saying, this is where I'm at right now. This is my current situation. This is the root cause. Don't spend all your time and energy finding the root cause. Spend your time and energy investigating it. So from here, from assess, of course, we move to prioritize. Prioritize. Now we know where our problems are. We know these 3 buildings, these 5 utilities, these 4 meters, right? We know where the issues are. What's the biggest bang for my buck? Right? I got X dollars. I got $100, I got $1,000, I got $100,000. What is it? What can we actually get done and have an impact on? Right? I put pie in the sky up there on the verbiage because I think a lot of times when it comes to energy, people think that this stuff is, you know, wind turbines and a solar farm. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about identifying that a local fire station has an increase in energy and we go over there and look and we realize that they've got an old refrigerator that doesn't have a door seal on it. Things just leaking air all day long. Right? It's about identifying and putting occupancy switches in bathrooms or warehouses because people never turn the lights off when they leave, parks, buildings. So what can we actually solve versus what is just kind of this fancy energy stuff? How do we actually make an energy impact? The pain has to be worth it, right? It's easiest to go through the low-hanging fruit. Get the stuff that's simple. So now that I know where my problems are, how do I actually automate the priority phase? Once we know where the problems are, we have to identify where the problem is biggest, and we do that through benchmarking. You do that by saying, these are the issues in one building, how does it compare to another? To give you an example of that, I'll pull up an image here. The idea with this is to identify what building is performing best, what building is performing worse, based on a standard set of details. In this example, it is total usage per square foot. So I've got a ranking of how much my buildings are using on a per square foot basis. Now what's important about this is it takes out the size of the building. It doesn't matter how big the building is. When we look at this, the first one that's up here is the Public Safety Training Center. Makes sense that that one would have a high cost per square foot. That's our highest traffic building. We've got the most employees in there. We've got the doors opening and closing because public is coming in. It's a training center, so there's constantly groups moving through. But does it make sense that it's that much significantly higher than everybody else? Probably not. It's probably something to look into. So another way that we can automate prioritization instead of benchmarking is by identifying and prioritizing based on billing data. So what I mean by that is when billing data comes in every month, we can automate the process of finding problems. So what happens is when my bill comes in, take this bill at the very top, station number 6, I can see right here that my average usage has a variance of 23%, 26%. It's a pretty big variance, right? There's something going on that's causing that. The idea here is that you are identifying and automatically flagging any major variances. So again, you're not spending the time trying to find the problem. It's already prioritized. It's already identified it. We can now go through this list and identify where these issues are. So at this point, just to recap here, from an assess standpoint, we are identifying what our current situation is. We're identifying where our peaks and valleys are. We're identifying what potentially might have an issue or a problem. Once we've identified where those items are, we have to look at the scale of that. So we know where the problem is, how big of a problem is it, what is the biggest problem that we have, what can we get done the quickest. So we've assessed our situation, we've set our initial priorities, so now we build our initial plan. Now the plan is an interesting part of this process because the plan is almost one of the most simple parts. It's time and money. It's the most simple part, but it's also one of the hardest to perfect. Because based on all the situation that I'm in, how much time and money do I need to get this stuff done? How much time and money do I need to actually implement the projects and reach the goals we've set? So our assess phase showed us where we are now, gave us our snapshot. Our prioritize phase got us our goals, helped us figure out where we're going. Now it's on you. It's on the person that has to wear that energy hat to clearly show your information. It is on you to go in there and show the history, show the documentation, and get that funding. The difference here is when you've automated the first 2 steps, when you've automated the assessment, you've automated the priorities, you have graphs, charts, you have actual, tangible, physical data that you can use to make your argument. You oftentimes only get one shot. Right, I have a lot of folks that I've worked with when I talk about these energy programs and concepts. They say, yeah, well, we tried that a few years ago. It didn't work, so now my board or my council isn't really very receptive to hearing about it. And that really stinks because if we had bad information or we got bamboozled by a bad vendor promising more than we could actually get in return from an energy standpoint, that can really sour people. So if we go in with the data and the history and the context and make sure that we aren't, going down an unknown path, that's the best way to get this plan kind of live in action. A lot of times when we have a plan, oftentimes it gets lost, right? We don't know what ends up happening to it. So one of the things that we can help automate with the plan side, obviously we can't automate them giving you money. Nobody can automate that, but we can automate what money they've given you, where it's gone, and what it's done. So when they do actually give you that $18,000 for the LEDs over at City Hall, or they do give you some work or some money to do weatherization or a chiller recovery program, right? How much did it cost? What kind of energies are we saving? What kind of rewards or rebates did we get to kind of do that work? We can't automate the plan, but we can automate the communication of the results. And that's the whole idea, is if we can communicate that part of it, the idea is that with the priorities and the assessment done, we know where we are, we know where we stand and where we're going, what our challenges are. If we can show success in the past, we are much more likely to have success there in the future from a funding perspective. So, what does that bring us to? Is the execute phase. This is pretty simple. Go do it. Do that retrofit. Implement that program. Execute your plan. Right? Again, not something you can automate because you don't want to automate this. You put your best foot forward. They funded your program. Let everybody know about it. Share it to the world. Right? Make it very clear. Make it very apparent the energy savings and what you're getting from those dollars. So again, going back to that same automation side, once we actually execute that plan, have a way to convey it, have a way to show it back. Again, whether it's through automated emails, whether it's through a monthly meeting, however you want to do it, set up the functionality so that the information is distributed to the right people at the right time when they need it. So when we go to execute our projects, right? We actually put in our lamps. We do our projects. The Clean Energy Program up in New Jersey is a great example. Originally, if I remember correctly, I believe it originally started off as a residential. I've worked with a number of municipalities, local governments up there that have, I don't want to say embraced it as an internal group, but they have identified that energy is something that's important to them as a municipality, not just for the residents. Right, there are a lot of state programs out there where the state or the local electric vendor is encouraging citizens to reduce or conserve energy. Right, so when we're in our execute phase, this is where you guys get to jump on that bandwagon. Right, put your logo out there, get your program out there, communicate what you're doing and why you're doing it. So at this point, guys, we've identified where we are, we've set our priorities. We did a good presentation and we got our money and we've actually gone and we've done our project. We're done, right? We don't have to worry about energy anymore. Unfortunately, that's wrong. Energy is ongoing. It's constant. So the final step in this process is maintain. You've got to keep going. Once we've done that energy project, we keep tracking. Once we've done lighting retrofits in every single building, we start moving to the next best energy efficiency, whether that's low flow fixtures, whether that's window retrofits, who knows what it is for your community. But we keep on tracking, we keep logging every bill, every month. How do you automate this? You automate data entry. You set up an automated interface so that every time your energy bill, water, electric, gas, fuel oil, whatever, every time that bill comes out, that data is input directly into that system. There is not a single person sitting in an office reading a paper bill and typing it up. It doesn't exist anymore. It has to go directly and it has to automate right into the process. We're also automating the communication of that. So every single quarter, every single month, we're emailing reports to the stakeholders that need them. Whether it's building occupants, whether it's department heads, whether it's specific groups of people. The idea is to communicate what we're doing and why we're doing it. Right? Convey your results, but keep going. You have to keep tracking. And the point is that as we keep tracking this stuff, once we automate this, the information conveyance becomes automated. With our data coming in each and every month, you can now lean on software to say, how much money did we save in the building number 2 last year? Right? How much energy have we reduced across this particular campus over the past 3 years? What you're looking at now on the page, this is an analysis of looking directly at a single location and how much money we have saved since we've done these projects. So very easy way, we've got our bills coming in, we know the projects we've done. The red bar represents the calculated cost of how much money you would have spent if you hadn't have fixed that building up, if you hadn't have done any projects. Blue bar represents what you actually paid that month. So here in September of this year, my baseline was a little over $1 million. My current calculated was $939. I'm $108,000 away from what I should have been paying. That's $100,000 that I would have written as a check to my utility company that instead are still sitting in my bank account. So to kind of bring this back full circle here, this model breaks into two specific areas. On the top, that is your automation. That is what you guys automate. It is completely off your kind of plate at that point because it is what is capturing and presenting you the data. Right? Maintain, that's our monthly data coming in. Assess, that's understanding where our current situation is. Priorities, where do we do our work? Once that is done, you guys are doing the plan and the execute. That's where you use your data to actually create an action plan and actually do it. And again, of course, we move back to the automation. So when it's all said and done, 5 things that you guys need to know in from an automation standpoint to go automated. First, you got to have that monthly data be automated. You cannot have a bottleneck there. Data must be looked at every month. Doesn't matter if the system's running in the background, somebody has to open it up and look at it. You have to show the results of your work. You have to show your products. The reports that you're providing, they must go to the people that care about them. There's no point in sending data to somebody that doesn't care or want it, right? And that's what leads to number 5 is there has to be a top-down buy-in. If this is something we're going to do, if we're going to automate this process, people actually have to have a little bit of skin in the game. They have to care at least enough to sit down and listen to you when you're bringing them the results or the analytics of what you guys are essentially having to do, being energy managers along with facility directors and superintendents and all the other hats you have to wear. So guys, I did have a poll here. We do have a couple questions that came in, so we'll give a couple of seconds on the poll and then we'll get to those questions. I should mention, actually, I just got a note here. I should mention that the screenshots I've been showing you, that is what Energy Manager in that statement is. So when it says information about Energy Manager, that is the program that provides all the reports and does all of that data automation. All right, I'll just leave that up while I read the first question. So first question coming in, what do you do when upper, okay, I guess they meant to say upper management. What do you do when upper management doesn't seem to really care about energy? And that's unfortunately common, but unfortunate but common. In the short run, you have to kind of make them care. You have to show them. The one thing I would like to say is energy is the only controllable expense you guys have outside of your labor. It's the biggest one, right? I can physically turn a light bulb on and off each day. It's a lot harder to control any other variable expense than that. Typically, energy is one of the top 3 line items. So it's one of the top 3 operational, not capital budgets, but operational budget line items. Also, I would say that the standard reduction, just by doing some tracking and some automation, is about 3 to 5%. So just by tracking, just by automating what you're doing, you can expect to see about a 3 to 5% reduction in your energy bills. And actually, looking at that question there, I think that answers the second question, which is what kind of results are you seeing from energy tracking projects? So about 3 to 5%. So typically about 3 to 5% of the people of the total funds used, or total funds in the energy bucket, are reduced through these types of tracking programs. All right, I don't see any other questions coming in. So again, this will be emailed out, the recording to everybody, and hope you all had a great day, a great time, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Thanks, Luke. Bye, everyone.